The fool is a very popular character in Jewish storytelling. So I would like to share one of those stories with you now. A fool comes to the rabbi and he says, "Rabbi, I'm known to everyone as a fool and I don't know what to do about it." And very affectionately, the rabbi turns to the man and says, "You know, if you know you're a fool, you're not so foolish." To which the man responds, "Yes, but everyone calls me a fool." To which the rabbi responds, "If you care about what they're calling you, then you really are foolish." I think that we've all been in that position where we care very deeply about what people say about us. It's our own sense of dignity. And I want to explore in the Parsha this morning the importance of perhaps sometimes being seen as a fool. So if you'd like to follow along with me in the text, you can do so on page 833. We're going to read the story about Miriam and Aaron getting upset with Moses about his choice of wife, and we'll look at it on the simple level first, and then we'll dig a little deeper to see what are apparently foolish actions and why they have wisdom underneath them. So I'm starting at the big number 12. When they were at Hatzerot, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. "He married a Cushite woman," they said. "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?" So they said, "We don't like your wife, and we don't like that you get to be so special." Pretty foolish move, right? The Lord heard it. Now Moses was a very humble man, more so than any other man on earth. And suddenly the Lord called to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out here, you three, to the tent of meeting." So the three of them went out, and the Lord came down in a cloud and stopped at the entrance of the tent and called out, "Aaron and Miriam!" And the two of them came forward, and he said to them, "Hear these words. When a prophet of the Lord arises among you, I make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream, but not so with my servant Moses. He's trusted throughout my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth plainly and not in riddles, and he beholds the likeness of the Lord. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses?" And still incensed with them, the Lord departed. As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam stricken with snow-white scales. And when Aaron turned toward Miriam, he saw that she was stricken with scales. And Aaron said to Moses, "O my Lord, account not to us the sin for which we committed in our folly. Let her not be as one dead, who emerges from his mother's womb with half his flesh eaten away." So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "O God, pray heal her." All right, I'm filled with questions about this story. He's been married to Tzipporah for a long time. Why are they complaining about her now? And what's more, what's to complain about? She's the daughter of a great priest. What's objectionable? And why is Miriam punished and not Aaron? And why does God punish them? I mean, he's slapping them down, but they're also well-known prophets in their own right, and Aaron's the high priest. None of this story makes sense. To shed some light on it, let's look at the Beha'alotcha. He is a 19th century Hasidic commentator from Poland. And to help us understand the Miriam and Aaron story, he starts back at the beginning of the Parsha. It's page 816 if you want to look. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you mount the lamps, let the 7 lamps give light at the front of the lampstand." So the Beha'alotcha says, I don't understand why he's asking Aaron to mount 7 lamps. To understand what the Beha'alotcha is getting at, you have to understand how the lamp was built. So it's a candelabra that has 7 branches, 6 surrounding the 7th one that's in the middle. So the Beha'alotcha is saying, how can Aaron adjust 7 of them? The one in the middle doesn't move. What's to adjust? It's the other ones that need to be surrounding it or leaning into it. And he continues to say that that 7th branch, the one in the middle, represents God's will, and that God's will is not always easy to understand. And then Beha'alotcha brings this story of Aaron and Miriam acting in a way that does not seem to be very dignified to make his point. And he mysteriously ends his commentary by bringing a quote from Ecclesiastes, which says, "A little bit of foolishness can outweigh much wisdom." We're supposed to read that line in its original context as, you know, if you've done a really great job, but then you do something a little bit stupid, people will forget the great job you did. But the Beha'alotcha is saying something else. He's saying, no, sometimes a little foolishness is important. All right, intriguing Beha'alotcha. Let's take another look at our story. Let's give it some context. What happened immediately before Miriam and Aaron went on their tirade? Well, first we get the story of Eldad and Medad. So there are these two men that all of a sudden start running around the camp, and they're giving prophecy. So Joshua comes to Moses and he says, I don't know if you've noticed this, but someone's doing your job. And Moses says, let it be, it's fine. Shortly followed by that is the story of the quail coming down, and the people start eating the quail in a really gluttonous way, and God gets frustrated at them and he strikes them with a plague because they can't be satisfied with the manna. So now you have people who are unhappy with this God they're supposed to be following through the wilderness. And you have an alternate leader to Moses if Eldad and Medad can hear prophecy. So this situation is ripe for rebellion. But as we're told when God is chiding Miriam and Aaron, Moses is a very humble person. There's no way he's going to put down this rebellion or say that Eldad and Medad shouldn't be prophesying. He's too humble to do it. So Miriam and Aaron devise a plan. They have to make their brother look good. So they pick something that's an utterly ridiculous complaint, maybe one they've heard rumblings about in the camp if some of the Israelites are racist. They say, we don't like your wife. And they're intentionally trying to make Moses look good and give God a reason to highlight Moses as the ultimate prophet. This, by the way, also explains to me why only Miriam was struck with the tzara, with the skin disease. See, if it's all a false pretense to help quell a rebellion, then it doesn't really require a punishment. And the problem with Aaron being struck down with skin disease is then he would be ritually impure. He can't do his job in the tabernacle if he's sick. So perhaps a little foolishness sometimes outweighs much wisdom. They gave up their appearance of dignity in order to quell a rebellion and reassert Moses' authority for him when he couldn't do it for himself. This theme plays throughout Jewish history. There's a story in the Talmud where a son opens up his father's will and it says, "My son may not inherit until he learns to be a fool." It's a mysterious thing for a father to write in his will, so the young man takes the will to the rabbinic court, and they're puzzled. They don't know how to interpret it. So they go to the home of an expert, and they knock on the door. It's Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha. And when the door is opened by his wife, there he is, crawling around on the floor, this great sage. He has a child on his back and a cord in his mouth, and he's neighing like a horse. And, he brushes himself off, and he, gets ready to have this serious conversation about the will. And they say, this man is not allowed to inherit until he's shown that he can be a fool. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha laughs and says, well, I think you understand already what your father was trying to tell you, which is that your dignity is not your ultimate value. And anyone who has graciously lost a fight with a spouse or taken one for the team at work knows that sometimes our reputation, right, it can take a little tarnishing if it's for the greater good, if we're trying to accomplish something that perhaps we have to look a little foolish in the interim to accomplish the ultimate goal. There is a midrash about the lamp itself, that it's the only vessel, the only tool used in the Beit HaMikdash that God showed Moses how to make with God's very own hands. Why? Because it was a very complex vessel. Now that's true. If you read the description of it earlier in the Torah, in Exodus, when we're building the tabernacle, it has scholars scratching their heads. We're not 100% sure how it actually went together. But if you read it on a metaphorical level, that light is not material light. It's not physical light that it needs to create. It's knowledge. It's understanding the will of God. It's understanding our purpose and what we're supposed to do. And that, we really do need God's hand to come down and show us how to do it. It is not an easy thing to understand, especially when it involves perhaps a little humiliation on our part. There's another midrash about the building of this sacred space, actually about Solomon's temple and the light that came out of it. Now, in order to understand the midrash, picture a medieval castle and picture the windows on it. So the windows of medieval castles are narrow on the outside, and then they broaden on the inside. Can you picture that? And one of the reasons was so that light would come from the inside through the stone walls and then broaden out and light up the room. But when Solomon built the temple, he built the windows in reverse. He made them narrow on the inside, and then they broadened to the bright daylight. And I'm sure there were people who, under their breath, said, Solomon is a fool. He's building this all wrong. He doesn't know what he's doing. But Solomon did know what he was doing. He was publicizing to all that the light in the temple, the relationship with God, is much brighter than the material light outside. And he didn't mind looking a little foolish to write this important message into the very structure of the temple itself. So the blessing that I saw in Beha'alotcha this week is, may we all be willing to look a little foolish in order to shed much light on the world. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.